you've probably seen a lot of students stress over this part. I see a lot of students who they stress so much over their standardized testing, and then when they're done and they're writing their essays and they're struggling with their essays, I wish I could just take the SAT again instead of having to write about myself. What advice do you have for students there, and how can high school counselor help with writing your supplemental essays or your Common App?
Yeah. I say, especially if they're starting to write their write their essays, that means that pretty much they've gone through 6 semesters of school. So, and the majority of them are applying early, which means that that's it. Their grades are done. They can't do anything more. Chances are by that time, their SAT scores, ACT scores are pretty much done. As far as like maybe except for being captain or president, their extracurricular kind of profile is pretty much done. So what do they have control over at that point in the summer of their senior year or first semester of their senior year? What do they have control over? One thing, that's their application. And out of the application, yeah, their activities list and resume and things like that. But ultimately, it's the essay that's the most important, right? Whether it's the Common App essay or the supplemental. Why is it important? Oh, I mean, how important is it? I think at this point, that's probably the most important because everything else is done. It's kind of like, okay, it's filed away. Like now, what can you do? Well, you can write a great essay that represents you the best way possible, or you write a terrible essay. That could be it. That's it. That's make or break. That could be 100%, if you think of it that way. So how important is it? It's very important. What is it that what they should write? There's some. The thing is, like I've had so many great writers. They're amazing, right? There's no way I can write the way they do, even though they're in 11th grade. But they're so bad at expressing who they are, talking about themselves. And so the one thing that I used to just harp on all the time, whenever I got a chance, whenever I had an opportunity, whenever I had an audience, was journal. Yeah. In 9th grade, 10th grade, whenever I get a chance, like, do you journal? And if the kids say they journal, chances are they're not going to struggle with it. Right? And what's journaling? It's not diary. Like I know in Korean school, I used to do it. I remember when I was little. 오늘은, I did this, I did this. That's, I don't know, maybe call it diary or ilgi or whatever. But I'm looking at a journal is not that. It's just journal is whenever you feel like you want to write about something because something bad happened or something great happened or something unbelievable happened and you just want to just sort of debrief it to yourself. So you're talking to yourself, but instead of talking to somebody else about like, whatever happened, you're talking to yourself on, just write. And then the more you write about how you felt and what you experienced and what you learned from it, and you get that sort of personal language going, chances are when that time comes, they'll be more prepared. I've had some of my best essays that I've read a couple of years ago while I was in Singapore. My favorite one was a kid who just took excerpts from her journal from like 6th grade, one from 7th grade, one from 9th grade, so like 5 little stories that had a certain theme to it. And she just literally, it was like really bad, 5th grade language. And then, and then you could see it develop. It was amazing. And so she finished that in like 20 minutes.
That'd be great if we could finish essays in 20 minutes.
Well, yeah. I think what we're talking about here is saying, like, your essays are supposed to be testament of the growth you've experienced throughout the 3.5 years that you've had in high school, and also kind of the person you've grown into and maybe who you want to continue to grow into in college. And it's good to kind of make point of the moments that make you feel something deeply, whether there's something positive or negative, and just to have kind of a good blueprint of it to kind of come back to. We see a lot of students who will come in and be like, I'm in this club, I did this activity, I enjoy it so much and it's so important to me. And then you sit them down and you ask them to talk about like one thing that they did or happened, and they struggle to pinpoint a specific incident because what they have is this lasting feeling of like, I did 3 years of this and it was so enjoyable and it's genuine and they really put their time and effort into it. But if you sit them down and they're like, okay, well, now talk about one thing that we can write about that somebody can read that's like, a decent amount of length. And they're like, I don't know. Well, I can talk about like the last 3 years, but like we can't talk about all 3 years. We got to talk about one thing. So it's a really good idea of like real highs and real lows or anything that just makes you feel something in depth, put it down and, like have a Notion, journal or like a single Google Doc that you can just kind of come in. That's a really good idea. The other question I would ask is, lots of students struggle because they think that the application is a place to kind of make themselves like look bigger and better and more grand than they actually are. And so when they're writing, they're struggling like, I have to put like this really good face about myself. But they don't have you're not that person. You don't have the materials to write that essay about yourself. That's not who you are. We have to have a conversation of like, here's a more realistic essay that can still be very meaningful. What is kind of the conversation you have in a context like that with a student?
Yeah, the stress comes from exactly that, right? You said it too, like how do I stand out among these literally tens of thousands of applicants who are probably identical to you in terms of numbers and everything else, all other stats. That's a lot of pressure. How do you, like, if you are the best at something and you just simply are the best, great, like that's easy. How many people are the best? One out of, right. So this is where the kids just, they start to be and write about somebody who they are not. It happens all the time, every time, almost every time. How do you make yourself special? Just be yourself. Do you have a story that's just kind of unique to you and what you learn from it? I don't care what it is that you learn. That a lot of times that the kids struggle with that too, because say, well, I struggled through that and then I learned that, but what I learned is so trivial. No, no one learned it the way you learned it. That's what makes you special. And as soon as you are genuine and honest about what it is that you have experienced and what you've learned, and you say it in a way that makes the reader feel like, oh, I know this kid now. Done. You've succeeded. You've made yourself memorable. You've made yourself special. It's when those kids who obviously do not know how to use that particular word, they use it because it sounds impressive, or they talk about something that they're really passionate about, but they act as if they can read right through it. I know with ChatGPT, I don't know exactly, like maybe it's a little harder now, but I still feel like, no, these people know what they're doing. And if you are being pretentious, you're not being yourself, then they'll not like you. If they don't like you, they won't take you. And it's the people that come, let's say to Seoul, those are usually the first readers of almost every application. So making an impression with them when they are here, whenever, if you can, that's great. But you also know that they are real people right there. You can almost touch them, you can talk to them, and those are the people that you're trying to touch. They read, if you're applying to any of those high level schools, they're reading applicants of superstars after superstars after superstars. You're not going to outshine any of them. But you can out-unique them just being being yourself. And that's the hardest part, especially for kids who are just used to being the best at school, at your little school. But you know how many schools there are and how many valedictorians there are?
All right.